so that I can post the tweets everywhere without doxing everyone in all my Discord servers. Because that would be embarrassing. That would be an embarrassing rookie mistake for someone to make 4 times. Yes, I know. It always seems to warn me that I'm going to at 30 plus people when I'm like, yes, I know, that's the point of the server, it is to at people. Right. Oh, there we go, we're back. Alright. Yeah, that's us. We're going to wait for some people to filter in then. And then we can go, because it's a painful book. I did not like this book. As everyone now knows, I'm not exactly a quiet complainer, as it turns out. Yeah, hi Mark. It is time to suffer. The time has come. We're gonna have to pay the price now.
Join us in the misery dojo.
Yeah. Also, apologies for Mick's mic. It will occasionally be robot voice, but you're all used to it because he's always on the stream. So there will be occasional robot voice. But
yes, and there's nothing I can do about it. We don't know why it only happens when our 2 streams cross over like this.
Yeah, I feel like between us, the guy with the physics degree and the tech journalist ought to have figured this out by now, and yet neither of us are able to figure it out. So.
What I cannot cope with is people saying to me, yeah, do you know that this isn't working? I do know it's not working. I use this setup every day for my Twitch stream, and it's never an issue, so God knows why this is the problem.
It's my fault. We'll just say it's my fault and we'll move on, just to save everyone the hassle. We're aware. We know there's a problem. It's fine. It shouldn't affect the quality of us yelling about this book very much. And yeah, we did read it so that you don't have to read it. That is the way we suffer for you all. Oh boy. Okay, so before we start with the actual like horrible content, let's do a guessing game. I'm gonna pick out some of the choice endorsements for this book, and I want you to guess who did the endorsement. I've got a really good one. Generous, severe, principled, eloquent, and righteous. Which centrist said that about this book, everyone? What do you reckon? I like that one in particular because it's a figure who I like dunking on quite a bit. So, no, not Matt Ford. You're in the right area with Matt Ford.
Ian Huntley.
Ian Huntley. Yeah, Mark always comes in with, oh yeah, that's yeah. Whoever said Dunty is correct. I'll do a couple more before we properly get started, just because it's not Tonty Blair. Come on, if it was Tonty, do you think I could contain myself? Okay, this is a really good one. Like a snowflake Richard Littlejohn, but armed with facts rather than saloon bar opinion. This is someone I actually like, so I feel bad dunking on this endorsement. But who do you reckon said that? Richard Littlejohn, armed with facts and logic. OJ, no. I do like Owen Jones, but like I don't think he wrote anything in praise of this book, at least not that was included in the book. Jar Jar Binks, no, we're stopping that now. Dara's a good guess. Monbiot also a good guess. Fred Durst, I mean, given the recent Papa Roach scandal. Yeah, not a scandal. They didn't do anything. It's the British government that did the scandal. Keith, yeah, not quite. Stuart Lee, yeah, Mark Kenosis got it right. It's Stuart Lee, which
is desperately disappointing.
It is disappointing because I quite like.
But the thing about Stuart Lee is he's just like, outside of the Stuart Lee stand-up character, he's quite gentle-hearted. So I think he probably just couldn't help himself but just say something, pleasant.
Yeah. And that's fair enough, like, I don't mind, but I'll read one more because it's a person. In fact, they've all ended up being sequential because these are the 3 best ones I could find. So, this is a bit longer, so everyone listen carefully. Measured, insightful, and quietly patriotic. An essential read for those who think there's a chance Britain has gone barking mad. This is the book I would have written if I knew what I was talking about. Who said that? I will point out that this is a person who I don't like, but whose book I have in the bookshelf because my partner has read their book. Not because I've read it. I would never read that person's book because it has nothing of value to offer me. Yes, whoever said Robert Webb, you got it. That's it. Also, do you think I have like Tony Blair and Hitler's books on my bookshelf? Jesus Christ,
you're not Michael Gove.
Yeah, like, come on. Like, don't be ridiculous. Like, I'm trying to think who the most controversial person up there is. It's probably Enver actually, now I think of. That's probably the one that will get me cancelled because of bunkers. But anyway, okay. I've given everyone enough time to come and find us. So, Nick and I read this book. We did read this book. It's not good. I think, to give a brief summary of it, it is the most lib-brain stuff I've ever seen. And even the excerpts of it that he has, where, you know, the conversations where he's owning people with facts and logic, not very good. They're not very good examples. There's like one kind of funny one about the Trump baby balloon, where I was like, yeah, he's kind of got a point about the baby balloon, but like, the rest of it is just nonsense. And also thanks for following the person who got the Soviet orb opening GIF. That one seems to be coming up a lot more than the others. I might have to change that. But yeah, it's not good. It is not good. But Mick, what did you think of the book before I monopolise hating it?
So in this book, James O'Brien talks about how he sat down with some people from the publishers at Penguin, and over some tea and biscuits, they came up with the idea for this book. I think basically what someone said was, you know that bit in Alan Partridge's biography where he keeps saying, needless to say, I had the last laugh. If you could condense that into just one book, and you just said that over and over again, perhaps with transcripts from your awful radio show, we think that would sell, 10 to 15 copies.
Yeah. And yeah, this is some leftist audio. I already apologised for Mick's audio because it's my fault. It is. Imagine I'm an extremely badly built robot. Yeah, and imagine I'm me. But I guess you wouldn't have to imagine that. That was kind of turns out that was the easy part of this. Right. Live from Siberia. That's right. So. We have the introduction. We did mention that he sat down with some publishers to talk about this. I have like loads of notes in here just in the introduction, which the first one is, I am a liberal talk show host. And I'm like, well...
Hang on, before we get to the introduction though, you're forgetting the epigram that he took from Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov.
Yeah. That upset me. Okay, I'll read the quote for everyone. Above all, don't lie to yourself. The man who lies to himself and listens to his own lie comes to a point that he cannot distinguish the truth within him or around him, and so loses all respect for himself and for others. And having no respect, he ceases to love. So that's the Dostoevsky quote he decided to use. My
note on that just says the last balls of this guy, and we are at page 0.
Yeah, and like, I like that book, and so that fucking ruined that book for me, so thanks, James O'Brien. Like, I actually like that book. Come on. And some of the brass balls on display in this book is, that's the tone you should take into it. I am a liberal talk show host was already like me being like, define liberal. And then he defines what the true liberal has, which I found quite funny. The true liberal is cursed with a desire, even a duty, to understand other points of view. It's a worldview that admits disagreement and dissent, but seeks to establish objective parameters by which the fundamental truth of things can be judged. So, he's incorrectly defined what liberalism is. So that's already a strong start. He hasn't defined liberalism correctly. And he doesn't even meet the definition of liberalism that he set out for himself, that he's invented out of thin air. So we're already off to a powerful start from James O'Brien.
The thing is, he would have been fine with that sentence if he just stuck with the first 5 words. The true liberal is cursed.
Yeah, that's it.
Brilliant. Fine.
Yeah, that immediately, like, just, you can imagine me slowly getting angrier as I'm reading this. And I just... there's a thing where he's like, I'm always keenest to hear from people who disagree with me, but he always seems really upset by it, so I don't know if he's really that keen on it, to be honest.
James O'Brien's like a gladiator fighting a tethered lion. Like, what his producers always get him, like, people they know he's going to be able to dunk on. Like, the rare occasions when he's met someone who can handle his arguing style, they just mute them and get rid of them.
Yeah, I actually made this note, which is like, but the fact that they rarely manage to, like, you know, own him, basically, is not a testament to talents on his part. And I'm like, yeah, it's a testament to the people who screen your calls. Like, like it's not like, at least he's recognised that. I do also like that, there's a point where he says, like, oh yeah, people who say that they screen my calls and they pick the weakest people are simply cowards and will not face me in the marketplace of ideas. And I'm like, that's not really what it is when we know how the screening process works at LBC. Like, it's not a secret. Like,
yeah, in fairness, he wrote this book before it came out that they deliberately called up a far-right person to call into Keith's radio show.
Yeah, that was not the finest hour. I do also like that the job of describing and challenging this process, which is like the process of people becoming scapegoats as a result of economic issues and, you know, financial crash and so on, falls to the liberal. And I'm like, that is really ahistorical and really not what liberals do usually. That's a citation needed right there, given the history of liberals in societies experiencing economic collapses and a rise in bigotry. I encourage you to look up Zentrum in Germany and see who they were a coalition partner of in the Weimar Republic and what their ideology was. Just if you're wondering whether liberals ally with one side or another in that case. It's, yeah, the intro is just him bigging himself up, and he also talks. He's like, he describes this person called John, who's like getting mad at, like, I can't say, people are silencing me. I can't say what I really think about immigration. He's like, can you debate with John? I'm like, no, you obviously can't. Why are you trying to debate with a guy who believes this shit? Like,
and so my particularly favourite, just unhinged part of that is where he goes, right, oh, John said that Hounslow is full of Pakistanis and they all stink, right? Obviously, it's a horrendous comment. So how does what does O'Brien think he has to do? He must counteract him with facts, right? He must counteract him with facts. So he says, John's patently wrong. I've personally smelled several British Pakistani residents of Hounslow and sundry other boroughs. And you just go, what?
That was a powerful admission.
James, you don't need to sort of like, we don't need to sort of fact check the racist. It's just, he's just being fucking racist. You don't need to do, like, and then to say, like, and then he does this sort of weird liberal version of, I have many friends who are Pakistani. It's like, what?
Yeah, I wasn't questioning whether you had many friends who are Pakistani until you said that, and now I'm like, well, does he have? I mean, I'm just imagining James O'Brien going around, like, London boroughs sniffing random Asian people to see if they smell of curry now. I'm like,
greetings, I am not a racist. I would like to say that your house smells fine. They're like, get out of our house. Why are you here? Who are you?
But, like, the way he I remember this because it's one of those ones where he has, like, the play-by-play of the debate on radio where he's like, don't you like the smell of curry though? And I'm like, that's not the way you counter it. Come on, are you serious? That's the counter you're gonna use? That's the own, like, actually my friends smell fine, but they do smell of curry. In fact, it's basically his fucking logic here. Oh man, it's just, that's way later where he goes into the debate with John. Like, oh no, wait, here it is, yeah. Not even way later, I'm thinking of another dipshit racist he argued with. And there's the thing where he talks about how, like, you know, calling racist is seen as, like, how can you do that without violating people's free speech? That's not fucking free speech, dude. You don't have, you know, like, dunking on someone for being a racist and saying they're racist wouldn't be infringing on free speech anyway. Did you stop them from fucking saying it? Like, come on.
So is this long passage where he's debating this guy Bob, who is definitely a racist, right? Just obsessed with immigration, talking, like, making complete bullshit points. And then he goes, it says to you as the reader, do you feel sorry for Bob? Is he a racist? I'm not sure. Like, the other thing about James O'Brien is the galaxy brain thing of everything is a question. Everything's a question. It's up for debate.
There was this passage stood out to me that I'm going to read, where my note is it's clearly rooted in racism, but I'm going to read the passage and let you decide, make a judgment on James O'Brien. It is clearly neither racist nor hard to imagine feeling unsettled by a woman walking in the streets of your hometown with their faces covered, or shops with frontages in incomprehensible languages. Yeah, and also Mix Mike is just a bit like that tonight. But yeah, it's certainly rooted in racism, and I probably wouldn't have led with, I completely understand how these people could feel. You know, like, wouldn't have done it. Just personally, wouldn't have been how I led the charge on that one.
Yeah, I don't find, you know, the notion that you see a Polish shop and you think, oh God, I'm terrified. It's like, okay, what he's saying is it's perfectly natural to just immediately jump to the most racist conclusion about anything you don't understand.
Yeah. There's also this bit where he's talking about the disgraced former editor Kelvin Mackenzie, where he said when he claimed to have proof that Muslims are different from the rest of us. And my note here is, okay, but do actual media critique. Like, there's this frustrating thing where he's like, he clearly identifies the problem, but then goes, actually, we can't possibly solve it or figure out what the underlying issue is. So it's, what can you do? I'm just going to write this book where I'm a massive dipshit. And
in that section, he raises like the question of Katie Hopkins and the fact that Katie Hopkins was working, for a period, it was a colleague of his at LBC, and he just goes, "Yeah, I felt soiled by it. It was bad," and then just moves on. He refuses to name her like she's Voldemort or something, and then he just sort of goes, "Yeah, I felt bad," and then you go, "Okay, well, how about you don't work there then?" By the way, he still has a lead in every morning from Nick Ferrari. Nick Ferrari kicks over to James O'Brien every morning, but somehow that's fine. And Nick Ferrari is just has a longer career of racism.
Yeah, and as people in the chat pointing out, does it feel that bad that he didn't feel the need to resign? Yeah, like, this is the thing where it's like, what are you doing about it? If you know that, oh, Taylor writes, you've missed like some intensely cursed content, including a passage where James O'Brien's like, I completely understand why racists feel racist. Like, oh, well, that's not reassuring at all. The premium liberal brain for you all. I mean, for real, this is premium lib brain. Also, this passage is just fucking weird. I'm going to read this passage out. You could stick me in the middle of China and feed me nothing but chlorinated sweet and sour chicken, and I still feel a patriotic swell at the opening bars of Hubert Parry's score for Jerusalem, even more so at the words of the poem Blake wrote, which just is a really strange set of words to put together. It's just deeply... If you want to get a sense of, like, what the typical structure of a lot of this is, it's that, but, like, extended and, adapted to specific situations. So, normal book. Very normal book. Completely fine. Nothing bad. I know, Mick. I know.
The thing is, like, particularly in the discussions in the British press about patriotism, right? I've written a lot in the media criticism newsletter that I do about this notion of, like, certain ideas that you cannot ever question. So, monarchy, you can't really ever question properly. You can never question whether it's okay, whether landlords are okay, right? That's just sort of accepted. From the Guardian to the Daily Star, it's accepted it's fine to be a landlord, right? That's just, you can't just say, actually, maybe landlordism is wrong. And this is another thing, patriotism in the British press, one way or another, whether you're like a milquetoast centre-left or whether you're a hard-right maniac, everyone's like, well, being patriotic is fine. Whereas, like, maybe there's a way of saying, Joe, you know what? Actually, it's kind of weird to be randomly proud of the country you're born in, and to, like, connect yourself to cultural signifiers that happened often before you were born. Like, James O'Brien secretly thinks he would have, he's the sort of person who thinks he would have been in the French Resistance if he'd have been alive in the Second World War. That's the way he thinks. He thinks, yeah, these people are stupid and racist, but not me, I would have been different.
Not me, but I'm different. Yeah, this sounds worse than Boris Johnson's novel. I mean, Boris Johnson's novel was a particular... Like, he's at least saying it with his chest in the novel, to be fair to Boris Johnson. To be fair, he's saying it with his fucking chest. Like, James O'Brien is convinced that he's not right. I feel like Boris Johnson is at least conscious that he may not be the supreme anti-racist, sort out Mixed Mike. We're trying. We don't know what's wrong.
We don't know what the issue with it is. It only happens on this stream. I do my stream every day, and Mike works fine.
What if you're a massive racist, but you actually like the inferior racist? Well, that is liberalism.jpg right there, I think. There's also immediately afterwards, he seems to identify what British values are. It's the first time I've ever seen someone try to define British values. So he defines British values as, these are the things that are being denigrated right now, apparently. Well, at the time of writing, probably still now, according to him. While routinely denigrating parliamentary sovereignty, the independence of the judiciary, and academics' freedom, which seem to be, to me, among the most valuable of British values. So at least he has an idea of what British values are to him, but also I'll point out that literally none of those things are unique to Britain. All were originally, created in Britain.
British values are getting angry about the bins.
Yeah.
That's the purest British value, is getting angry about when is bins.
Yeah, and also academic freedom. I don't think we ever really had that as a British value for a while. And also, I'll point out that, the actual British value, mixed somewhat close to it, is making up a guy and getting mad at him. That is the most premium British value.
Well, that's true. So the bins thing is about making up a guy who has made the bins not work properly.
Yeah.
So the bins is a subset of the guy mentality.
Yeah. British people, the most intense cataloguers of types of guys, as it turns out. That's why all of our podcasts and streams are dedicated to finding new types of guys. I don't think James O'Brien is a new type of guy. So he has this exchange with Andy, who's talking about, British values are being eroded because Christians are outnumbered. And, that's... and he talks about, he's like, oh, maybe the racist is telling me the truth and there is a segregation policy at this school. And I'm like, no, idiot, the racist is not telling you the truth. He's a fucking racist. He's made up the story. He's just like, oh yeah, by the way, I think religious segregation is wrong. Yes, no one thought that was fine. This is fine. You didn't have to clarify it. There's a lot of weird clarifications where he, is like, no, I think that would be wrong if it happened. The thing that the racist is honestly telling me.
James O'Brien always believes that mad racists are arguing in good faith, but always also believes that anyone on the left is arguing in bad faith. That is one of his fundamental structural ideas.
I also enjoyed that he only mentions Jeremy Corbyn 3 times, but all 3 of them are negative. So,
extremely negative.
I did immediately search Corbyn in the search bar just to see what came up. And it wasn't like the ridiculous foreign policy pamphlet that mentioned him 8 times per page, but it was almost as bad just per capita of negativeness. So here's the thing about Andy, where he's like, I don't know why he wanted, perhaps even needed, the narrative of being overwhelmed and under threat to be true. And it's just read any book about fascism and how fascists exploit certain sentiments and push them. Please, for the love of God, read something that isn't Harry Potter. Just... anything, literally anything at all would have...
Well, because he touches on stuff the notion of that they've been indoctrinated around explicitly racist concepts like cultural Marxism, right? But if he read even a tiny bit, he would understand that cultural Marxism is an anti-Semitic trope. But he can find anti-Semitism in political opponents, around political opponents based on random Facebook comments, but when it comes to an ideology on the right, cultural Marxism, which is anti-Semitic from top to bottom, doesn't question that. He just puts that in there and goes, "Oh, they've been told about this thing called cultural Marxism."
Yeah, so I put a note on the bit where he talks about where he mentions cultural Marxism, and I'm like, I'd interrogate this point further. That seems like the point that I would have interrogated a bit further if it was me talking about this. Yeah, he's he didn't think to mention whether cultural Marxism was or was not, an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, which it is, by the way.
There's no research in this book. It's all I reckons well, actually, it's based on what he already thought. He didn't sit down and write his book and go, well, here are these transcripts from my show, but maybe I'll like do research to put them into context or try and understand was I right. Because he just, the assumption he started with is, I am definitely right, and I will explain to you why I'm right.
Also, George with studies of my own brain show. That is certainly the way it's been done. There's this bit where he's like, certainly the radio format lends itself to cajoling and castigation to a degree that can sometimes seem close to bullying. Well, he did like lose his shit at a Corbyn supporter on the radio recently, so he would later go on to basically prove that the format definitely lends itself to that. Also, Zintelface, hey, before I forget, I owe you a golden Tonti badge. You got to DM me so I can get rid of these things. I'm sending them all out at once so I get rid of them. And also,
we are still in the introduction.
Oh no, like, I'm already, like, feeling the blood pressure. You can't feel your blood pressure, but you all know what I mean. I'm feeling the energy now. Yeah, here's the quote. Here's the quote about him, like, all of the people who can't, who don't call in are cowards. Of course, some of the people who lack the courage or confidence to call in have persuaded themselves that the people who end up embarrassing themselves on air have been specially selected for the weakness of their position. We know for a fact that's fucking true. Like, that isn't a secret. We know how call-in radio works. Like, there is a screening process. They're not going to pick out someone who's going to embarrass their guy. It's like, you know, in Rocky, where he's become the champion and they just have him fight random dickheads all the time to keep his belt. It's that. They're doing that. Like...
Yeah, and then there's the other way that it works, which is because I've been on as a guest on LBC before on Nick Ferrari's show, right? Called up to, like, be... Which is like, what they do is let's try and get someone who's a left-wing journalist or we think is left-wing, get them on, and then Nick can humiliate them. But what I always do is I just go on and be relentlessly reasonable at him, which makes him more and more angry. But they do that too because you talk to the producer, and what the producer says is, right, is there any way you tell them what you think, and then they try to steer you towards having an opinion that is more likely to be, you know, easily broken down by Nick Ferrari. And if you've got no experience of that, I've heard it happen often. You hear young journalists go on and they end up just, you know, tied in knots because they've been prepped by a producer to get tied in knots.
Yeah. And also, yeah, why does he think that we don't know how production happens? I don't know. I think he just assumes a lot of us are idiots, which, I mean, fair, but, like... we can see the things with our eyes sometimes. Sometimes we might be lucky enough to have someone who knows how the media works on streams like this. Who can say...
Well, remember, he started his career at the Daily Express, so his underlying opinion of the public is that they are bovine masses.
He actually mentions this as a point in his favour, weirdly, because he's like, well, when I was there, the Daily Express supported Labour. And I'm like, that's not really the own you think it is. Like, you know...
Yeah, it was toilet paper when he worked there. The other thing, right, which he doesn't mention at all, but we should all be aware of, is just before he started on LBC, he was doing a TV show which only lasted for one series called O'Brien, which was a sub-Jeremy Kyle Bear Pitt TV show. And he was a right-winger in a suit with a really neat hair, and then he switched to, like, Scruffy James.
And it's also unfortunate, if anyone has seen the picture of where we Brendaned James O'Brien, because his forehead was unfortunately, you know, emphasised by the hairstyle, and so there is a Brendan image of James O'Brien that exists, and it is incredibly funny. And and yeah, so he describes as the British media being incredibly bad, especially on the issue of immigration, which yes, but he talks about pockets of resistance at The Guardian. I mean, I'm not gonna offer a too strong an opinion, but that doesn't sound strictly correct to me.
You know how Mal's wife called herself a unit of one. Do you think that James O'Brien thinks that Owen Jones is a single pocket of resistance? That's just him.
I don't think he was thinking of Owen Jones. Strangely, he does. No,
I don't think he was, but yeah. Like, you know,
resistance to upper range tax rises. Well, who can say? Wait, hold on. What was my note here? I don't even know. Oh, that was just me dunking on his writing style. Never mind, that's not important. That's for me later when I laugh at this. Sorry, everyone. Half of these notes are for the stream, and half of these are me just asides to myself. Okay, we've got the first note where I lost my mind. So he talks about how, the idea that the immigrants are coming and they're depressing our wages, and he talks about this only helps to excuse the employers who aren't paying decent wages, the politicians who are underfunding the public sector, and the property developers who aren't building houses. And I'm like, Discord's done the thing. Excuse me, everyone. Discord has done the thing. F's in the chat for Mick there. Hey, Mick, I'm back.
Hey.
How you doing?
What happened?
How much libel did you do while I was gone?
Tons.
Oh, no, you hate.
I just shouted all the things I know in a stream, just a single primal scream.
Yeah, hold on. The capture has decided not to work for one. Hold on.
Yeah, the gate.
Hey, there it is. There it is. It's back. Sorry, everyone. It's gonna do that sometimes. But yeah. So he's talking about the immigration debate is deflection from poor wages and underfunding the public sector and not building houses. And I'm like, yes, every single leftist in this country was fucking saying that. What the fuck are you? There's a lot of this where I'm like, yes, there have been people identifying these problems. And you've been shitting on those people this entire fucking time. What the hell is wrong with you, man? Yeah, also, yes, I hope you all enjoyed the... was it not all... Wait, it's not all because of Brexit. We'll get to Brexit. There's an entire chapter on Brexit. It's bad. O'Brien's massive brain keeps interfering with the Wi-Fi throughout the United Kingdom. That explains a lot. He also talks about Richard Desmond being a pornographer, which I don't really give a shit about, but I thought was a weird thing to talk about.
That's their favourite attack on Richard Desmond, right? Well, there are many other things you could say about Richard Desmond. The porn aspect is the least of the matter, but what he's repeating there is that was an attack line that was used when Labour under Blair took a big chunk of cash out of Desmond. It was why is Desmond taking money off a pornographer? Why is Blair taking money off a pornographer? Which is a Daily Mail line, and a lot of things that James O'Brien says are actually Daily Mail lines that he has sort of subsumed into his mind and that form part of the sort of superstructure of his being.
Superstructure of James O'Brien is a parody account waiting to be made if anyone wants it. Okay, so I have written this. I put the note here of lib nationalism. Love to see it. So I'm gonna read this. That chief among them was the idea that immigration was driving down the wages of British workers. I put British in quotes here because, for me, anyone working in Britain is a British worker, just as anyone working in a fish and chip shop is a fish and chip shop worker, which, is just the most lib nationalism nonsense that I've just... you don't have to do this. You don't have to perform tolerance, in this way. Please stop. Please do not do that. There's a lot of stuff here that does stick out a little bit with a slightly more critical eye.
Some of his best friends are chip shop workers.
That's right. And there's this bit here where he talks about... Oh, wait, let me see if I get this right. I've completely blanked. He's talking about real-term pay cuts and people making more profits, and how people like Richard Desmond they fund these papers and they do the Brexit stuff, and he's starting to complain about Brexit now, and I'm like, yeah, are they acting in their class interest? That would be an interesting discussion about why they do these things. Instead, we don't get anything, basically. We pretty much move to him complaining about Paul Dacre, who, you should complain about, but... and he talks about younger callers saying that they've lost their parents and grandparents to the Daily Mail. That's a common occurrence, I think, for people who aren't lucky enough to have incredibly based Marxist parents. Who can say who that might be referring to? But yeah, that's a whole thing. We're still in the introduction, aren't we? God damn it.
But his analysis of the British media is always surface, only at a surface level, right? And he likes to have goodies and baddies. Whereas, I've reached a point where my whole perspective on it is the entire thing is rotten. beams are rotten, right? So this notion of like an obsession with individual characters, which he has. It's why later on, when we get around to the Brexit thing, you'll find that, you know, he's so able to turn individual Tories into like these potential heroes, the Anna Soubries of this world, into potential heroes for him, because they agree with him on one issue. He's like, oh, these are the good Tories. And in the same way, he could be like that about Daily Mail writers. He go, well, these are the good writers there. Because everyone's like a goodie or a baddie. It's professional wrestling without any of the like underlying analysis beneath it.
Yeah, people have suggested that we use Skype next time, which we might do. We might have to just use Skype for Mick, which means that you're going to force me to use Skype. You monsters. I hate you.
Yeah, or Zoom, or many other options.
There are other options. We'll look into it next time. Hey, Chaos Reprobates subscribing at tier 1. Boil the gammon in salt water or tears. Well, we're working on it. Yeah, I think I didn't have any more notes for the introduction, which is probably for the best, because I'm just seeing stuff that I would like to yell about, but probably best because I'm going to read out the first chapter title, and you're all going to understand why I've been upset at the chapter titles. Alright, is everyone ready? Islam and Islamism is the title of the first chapter. I mean, oh no. Oh no. It's happening. It's not good. It's not a good chapter. Actually.
And he begins the chapter with a positive history of the IRA.
Yeah. I'll read out the first sentence. It's hard to believe now, but growing up with an apostrophe in your surname in Britain in the 1970s and 1980s was often enough to see you accused of supporting the IRA, which, I mean, it's a neat opening to the Islam and Islamism chapter, as he is entitled it. Is he literally doing gentleman bombers? I mean, we're gonna find out. It's not great. Let's see. Yeah, so here's a whole thing. People conflating his dad. He talks about his dad here, who was apparently a journalist. I did not know that, really.
Yeah. He was adopted, and his adopted father was a pretty well-known Daily Telegraph journalist.
Yeah, and so he talks about how after September 11th, he was stunned by how quickly some people sought to paint all Muslims as complicit in the atrocity. And I'm like, why? Why were you shocked? What element of Western culture that existed made you think that this wasn't a thing that would happen? I don't know. Like, is it some liberal myth-making that the West, by virtue of being liberal democratic, must have had tolerance for everyone? And like, yeah, what was the point of this intro? Anyway, you're all getting me more mad about the intro than I should be, but like, yeah, I don't know that he had any cause to be shocked if he was remotely able to pay attention to anything. And, let me see what's happened here. Oh, alright, okay, so there's a chapter here where I lost my mind, which is, he talks about how a British Muslim knows that not only that she is just as likely to be a victim of attacks on the London Underground or the Manchester Arena as anyone else, but also that she will, before the bodies of the victims are cold, be blamed for it by people previously considered friends, colleagues, and neighbours. And I'm like, yes, but why? Why does this happen? And how does your nonsense actually fix it? It doesn't, does it? Like, this is the frustrating thing.
He is incapable of structural analysis, because the thing is, if he started pulling at those threads, what would he have left?
Yeah.
Eventually, he kept pulling at those threads. How is LBC justifiable? If you think that people are lied to by the media, and that the media is structurally flawed to such an extent that, and the talk radio is really just a megaphone, to further racist ideology, then he can't justify his existence. So he has to sort of go, well, it was the other bad media people who did this, but I am here, with my spear of truth or whatever.
Yeah, there's the line, the circle around him. Oh god, I can't wait for the bit where he invokes the veil of ignorance. Oh my god, there's so much bad stuff in this book. Also, James Wolfe Tone O'Brien is just, Let's see. There were other. Oh, I'm not reading out Watson's one because then that's going to get clipped and I'm going to get in trouble. But yes, that was very funny. Jordan.
I have to now look at the chat to see.
Yeah. It's really funny, but I'm also not repeating that on the stream.
Yes.
He doesn't seek to combat racism. He doesn't care about ending sexism or Islamophobia or homophobia. He just exists to make liberals feel better about their inaction. Yeah. Why would James O'Brien want to end racism? How could he debate it if it were to end? You kind of got at some of this. I started trying to write fewer notes because at this point it's just a wall of yellow. And he talks about he talks about how it's so bad. They were writing headlines like, if we want peace, we need less Islam, like a comment piece in The Sun is what he's referring to there. And I'm like, yes, but you literally share a platform with people who say this shit all the fucking time. Like, it's...
Yeah, remember, Nick Ferrari is the person who told a British Asian woman, if you don't like him, why don't you leave?
Yeah.
On Sky. And nothing happened. Nothing happened because that's just fine. That's just the cut and thrust of debate in the in the free speech dojo.
Yeah, that's it. If you can't hack it in the dojo, leave the dojo. Basically, it's appropriate that I've got my Gorka goatee going on for this one, because this is very much ends joining James O'Brien in the Mind Palace dojo, because it is very much a bad. But he talks about how, surely all of this media shit that people are having thrown at them partly excuses the racism. I'm like, no, it doesn't. How is that how is that an actual excuse for it? Like, he's desperate to be like, no, you don't understand. It's the media environment, which I refuse to criticize, that does this to people. And I'm like, I feel like there's a solution there. Yeah. God, it's a disaster. And also Gridbug with a very, very good summary that I had to add a permitted term, which was Nazi Germans. Which, yeah. Oh, sorry. Correction in the chat that the journalist was not Asian. She's mixed race with a Ghanaian mum and a British dad. Oh,
yeah, thank you for the correction.
Yes.
Do you know why that was? Because I was reading the page where it was talking about Fatima Manji, and so my brain went, and conflated those two things.
Yeah.
But yes, it stands. It was on the pledge. The clip is out there. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, he was talking about... He's arguing with this gentleman, Richard from Marlow, which is just a type of guy. He's talking about the attack on Charlie Hebdo, and basically he describes Richard as a thoughtful and clearly educated man, and it's just this note about liberals overvaluing education. And there's this quote here which I picked out, and what was my note here? Because I'm pretty sure it was... Yeah, okay. If you were seeking to persuade an impressionable young Muslim man to become a terrorist because the West really did hate him, his family and everyone like him, it's hard to think of anything more helpful to your cause than much of the media. And it's like, yes, so why did you get mad at the one person who actually pointed that out in the mainstream of politics? Like, just... oh, for goodness sake, yes, it turns out the West's attitude towards Muslims and its foreign policy perhaps impacts people's decisions. I wonder who pointed that out. Come on, are we serious now? But he's talking about the previous caller to this guy, who was a gentleman called Abbas from Reading. Shout out to Abbas from Reading, just because hometown solidarity right there. And it's this man, Richard, who's demanding that every single Muslim in the world apologise for Charlie Hebdo. You will be familiar with this. This happens to every single minority group whenever anything bad happens at any point. James O'Brien seems completely unaware that rather than just existing in the media culture he apparently loves, he also reproduces it both for his own profit and for the profit of LBC. Yeah, This is kind of what it is. It's the problems are bad, but the causes are me.
Well, this is another fundamental aspect of the British media. It's like, if you look at the stuff around the around Meghan and Harry this week, a lot of the media write as if they are not actors in the debate. They just write about the debate. It's like when you see in the stories where they go, calls are growing for, and then you go, calls are growing for. The calls are coming from the media. That's what the calls are growing for. calls are going for this politician to resign. It's like, it may be that people in the street are saying this guy should resign, right? But they don't have access to national newspapers or broadcast. The calls are coming from there.
Yeah. It's like, well, calls are coming from this newspaper that this person should resign. Just say you want the person to resign then. The calls are coming from inside the house. Yes, exactly. That is, given the way
that the house is owned by Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah, and given the way that the political and media spheres intersect, it is quite literally the same house in a lot of cases. Though I think Mick goes on about the personal relationship side of it more than I do. So, people who are best friends with the Chancellor and so on.
Yeah, James Forsyth every Friday in the Times writing a column, which could essentially have been dictated to him by his wife, Allegra Stratton, official person for the Prime Minister, or his best friend from school and godfather to his children, the Chancellor Rishi Sunak. But does the column ever say that on it? Of course it doesn't.
Yeah.
And the other thing about James O'Brien is, we'll get to this later in the book, but he makes big play, as he's entitled to do, of the fact that he was adopted, and how him being adopted gives him a special view of hardship in the world. But then he doesn't like to mention that often that he went to extremely expensive private school.
Yeah.
Because he will mention it, but very quietly and not often, because that changes things slightly.
Yeah. Oh, hi, John. No, we haven't got to rules. Rules is quite a way away. We're taking our time with this one. We're grinding through it. We're grinding this book into fine paste. So there's this passage which I found a bit uncomfortable. I'm going to read the entire passage out so you have full context. I seem to infuriate these people most when I insist that the crimes of a terrorist or a rapist or a paedophile are not worsened when committed by someone of a particular ethnicity or professed religion. There is a deep desire to believe that Muslims, like Jews and people of colour before them, are somehow predisposed to commit certain offences. He's writing about this like it's a past tense thing, which made me feel a bit like, does James O'Brien think that these bigotries have magically been solved and don't still exist in the UK? Because that is, that's an interesting analysis to have on it, to say the least. I don't know if that stood out to me as like, and there's lots of these small things that keep coming up where he writes about things in these ways.
Yeah, and it's in the next page that he says, yes, again, the line between what he honestly believes and where he had been unwittingly led by acres of newsprint and broadcasting is almost impossible to draw. It's not, you just don't want to.
Yeah, like, you can definitely draw. I'm not going to read out the transcripts because they are, frankly, just his finest hits. Well, what he thinks are his finest hits, and a lot of them make him sound kind of dumb.
Hang on, there's one bit in the next transcript that's worth looking at, though. So the caller says, I did not like seeing women with their faces covered up. It scared me. And James O'Brien immediately says, same here. I don't know if it scares me, but I hate it.
Yeah, that's not great. I wouldn't have put that in your book where you're being the king lib. Although maybe that's, the thing. There's this thing where incidentally, if you're wondering, the next YouTube video is on echo chambers, and Mick helped with the script a bit on that one, mostly correcting my bad writing. But
your writing was not bad. It's just I'm an editor, but it was minor things.
Yeah. So their bespoke, unchallenged diet of news, augmented, we know now, by Facebook algorithms and deliberately fake stories, is so unvaried that the possibility that it might be largely bogus is never entertained. He's trying to describe an echo chamber here, but he's used way too many words for it. And I'm making this point, which is there might be other problems besides Facebook.com's algorithms. It might be the wider media environment that causes these problems. And
That's Cadwallader brain.
Yeah.
That's Cadwallader brain.
And you're gonna hear me talk about that on Monday, depending, and the time of release is to be confirmed. It depends on how good I am at editing and uploading stuff. Yeah, he talks about. Let's see what this is. Yes. He talks about the EDL, which is, that's a whole thing. This ragtag bunch of football hooligans realise quicker than most that with newspapers in decline and trust in traditional media vulnerable to attack from all sides, again, all sides sticks out in this passage, some people would enjoy being told repeatedly and furiously about the enemy within the fifth column who could not easily be identified. Again, I don't think the decline of traditional or legacy media is directly connected to people who always say this shit all the time. And why are they in decline?
The other thing here is this is a great example of like he's not done any research, right? If you look at the EDL, and you can trace the EDL back to stuff like Combat 18, like obviously the BNP, like the National Front. There are people who were involved in the EDL who had previously been involved in movements like that. The far right, like there's a whole infrastructure and ecosystem, and this notion that the EDL just sort of swirled out of the dust and appeared. It's ridiculous, and it just shows how he doesn't. He's ahistorical in his thinking most of the time, and he cannot think about structure.
Yeah, a lot of ahistorical stuff. The far right has been a whole ecosystem for a while. And let's see. There's this excerpt with James here, who was watching videos on the EDL website, which is always a fun pastime apparently.
This is Ray. This is Ray.
Oh, Ray,
whose wife told him to stop it.
Yeah, shout out to Ray's wife, who absolutely is correct.
She solved it by making him put the laptop under the sofa for a month, which cured him.
Which, by the way, like, that's the ultimate, like, getting told to log off by your spouse move. And so we stan Ray's wife, who, but he talks about, like, how, how if people like Ray can be encouraged to lift their heads up and sort of stop it, cut it out, basically. Can't we do that for other people? And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know how you scale it up. Like, that's the problem, right? We can't have a wife-run, like, media ecosystem. I mean, we could. It would be pretty funny. Just to wind up some of the people. But, like, we can't have a wife-run media diet mandate. Like...
Yeah, bear in mind, we've got a cabinet minister's wife in the media, and she's not doing anything good. There is a bit here. The next bit is when he talks about how people like Milo Yiannopoulos and Katie Hopkins make money from get money and fame from preaching, right?
Yeah.
Where is the mirror? Is his house got no mirrors?
Yeah, I know. Like, he does this literally all the time. Is that your note that you posted where you're like, he does this all the time for money on the radio? Like, yeah. Where you just, like, lost your mind at the... See, I've been losing my mind progressively all day, so this is just me finally...
update for viewers, we're only at 19% through this book.
Yeah, we are not making good progress. This is how bad this book is. There's... Yeah, Garfield, wonder who that's for.png, exactly. Then there's a conversation with a Frank from Birkenhead, and no, I don't think it's that Frank from Birkenhead, so... If before anyone thinks it's the former Labour MP, which, admittedly, given some of the content, I'm like, well, maybe we can speculate on that, but, yeah. Oh, man. Just trying to win Frank over in conversation, owning him in the debate dojo, and he holds precisely the same position as all the prominent people on InfoWars and Breitbart, or those peddling their homemade videos online, who routinely claim that their freedom to say such things is being compromised, usually while inviting financial contributions from their deluded flock. The thing about these positions are, they're also held by some of his fucking colleagues and people in the press.
This is what I find incredible. Right? The only difference between LBC and InfoWars is marginally more entertaining.
As we found out on the YouTube Zone, where we watched Alex Jones describe video games, because that was it's not good for anyone's health to watch.
Alex Jones on the classic Alex Jones that I can always watch if I want to just burst out laughing is Alex Jones on the Making the Frogs Gay is an absolute classic of the genre.
They're turning the frogs gay. I mean, he's a great broadcaster, at least. He's just a horrible fucking person. John, exactly. Of course, if you win a debate, then that's all the problem solved. I can't wait to do my Why Debates bullshit YouTube video, because that's going to be really good.
Hey, great news. We're just about to tumble into the Brexit chapter.
Oh, yeah. Oh, shit. The next chapter's Brexit. And my note here is, once again, oh no. There's a lot of that to go around. It does get worse. Oh, good lord. He describes here the will of the people meant that 17.4 million disparate and diverse people had all voted for exactly the same thing without realising it, and describes it as namely a Brexit which would mean whatever Paul Dacre, the billionaire owners of the Daily Telegraph, and Jacob Rees-Mogg wanted it to. Again, these are all just liberal bugbears at this point. And I mean...
He patronised as a plumber.
Yeah, and I will point out that on his will of the people remark, well, a lot of those people did vote for that explicitly at the 2019 general election, so it turns out that may not have been the wisest position to take. James O'Brien seems permanently pissed off, always sweating and angry. Like, I think he's just not the fittest man for his age, perhaps. Maybe that's part of the problem. I'm also not the fittest man for my age, in all fairness. But, yeah, he then patronises a plumber, which is always a really clever move to show how, although I do enjoy the British jam, tea and biscuits, which, I could go for, admittedly. And, okay, right, here's a note. This is more like him not understanding the fucking meat. So he describes Andy, this person, who's bright, entrepreneurial, professional, with his young company and eye on the future. Again, weird focus on how bright people are. He talks about how he's simply existed for years in a media-defined environment where this depiction of the overarching and negative influence of the EU laws went so unchallenged it became for him and millions like him a simple truth. Then criticise the media structure, do media critique. Fucking do the media critique then. Don't write about how good you are at owning people with facts and logic. Maybe he understands his range and knows he can't write about media critique. But, like... that strikes me as the more obvious problem here than whether you got dunked on by some dipshit,
I know we're focusing more on content and style, but I just want to make a side point about style, right? This MF writes like he is like from a Joss William book. He's always saying stuff like nonsense on stilts or calling men chaps, right?
Yeah.
The guy's in his 40s, and he writes like he's like Bertie Wooster sometimes, and that just drives me crazy as well, because it's just this thing of like it's affected, because we know his LBC persona is affected, just as his right-wing tub thumper sub Jeremy Kyle TV persona was affected. I don't know what the real James O'Brien is. I think it's like a tiny little husk within whatever this lib kind of exoskeleton he operates is.
Gengar, who we know about the audio. Please, everyone, please don't mention the audio. It annoys both me and Meg, who are both extremely qualified in this thing and don't know how to fix it. So
we don't know. It only happens on these streams. I use this setup. I'll say this one last time. I use this up every day for a Twitch stream with where there are like 20 or 30 regular people who watch it, and it's always fine.
Yeah, this is my fault, basically. We've established that this is my fault, and we're moving swiftly on, so everyone can blame me and at me on Twitter about it. But actually, it should be illegal to at me. I'm getting ready for my Blue Tick audition. Of course, there's the bendy bananas nonsense about the EU, because of course that's one of these things these people love to dunk on. And, he actually did finally manage to imply that there's a structure, but he only did it directly in relation to Brexit, which is, this criticism is not confined to callers like Andy, it goes to the very top of the Brexit machine. Good, he's identified a structure, but only in relation to Brexit. So...
and only to one side of Brexit, because remember, he cannot, he can say, the Leave side, very bad, lots of bad people up there, right? But he's not able to look at, say, the People's Vote and say, maybe that they were about spoiling any possibility of a Labour winning the election. And once they've done that, the People's Vote dissipated like just so much steam. Their websites, everything just gone. disappeared.
The only remnant of like the Romani stuff was Mike Gape still legally owning the company that was Change UK, which
and
the
Romaniacs for a while before they became the bunker.
Yeah, Terror Rights, yeah. Is that even a structure? He's basically talking about Leave.eu. But again, they think that's a structure, right? I'm going to try and give him as much credit as possible as I do to the people who I dunk on these things. Yeah, poor Mike, he was left alone, abandoned. Blocking me on Twitter was the last moment he really shined. If you have the Gapes emote, now is the time. I haven't fully recovered from the Gapes block. Okay, let's see. What's he's talking to Sean from Uxbridge, I think it is. Think of Sean as a poster boy for people who talk about legitimate concerns surrounding immigration and dismiss the notion that this is often camouflage for some pretty base views. He talks about, basically this is a conversation where James O'Brien owns the racist by saying, no, there aren't any non-white people from the EU. Who are the non-white people from the EU? And I'm like, that's not quite the solution to the problem here. It's not to say, no, the people from the EU are white. It's fine, actually. Like, no, not the way I would have tackled this in the slightest. Yeah, terrorites, yeah. Like, he's like, which black people are coming from Poland? And I'm like, that is not the way you tackle this at all. Not how you do it. Do not do it this way. And he's like, people voted to leave because they saw too many brown people. And he's not. And I will tell you I can tell you from anecdotal evidence that that's not true. I got told that there were the Muslims in Poland were going to buy the army on the doorstep in the 2016 referendum. I regret ever siding with Remain in that, but I did. I did so because the media was pretty ghastly, specifically to me. Not me personally, but to people like me. So I regret doing that now, but he... this is a thing that exists, but the solution is not to simply say, no, but the people in the EU are white. It's fine. Look at how white they all are. Have you ever seen a tanned person from Scandinavia? I haven't. Like, this is basic. I'm putting words in his mouth there.
But that is the interior sort of implication of what he's saying.
Yeah, that is
half the time.
That is me interpreting. Yeah,
but, I mean, this chapter is a mess. This chapter is a mess.
Oh yeah, it's all over the place. There's the next exchange, which is about Vince Cable. And Vince Cable, offered an opinion. He was entitled to the opinion that Leave voters would start to regret their decision. And he talks about... So here's the thing. The caller talks about, well, we're not allowed to deport people from the UK back to the EU if they're jobless, whatever. They did crimes. And James O'Brien's solution to this problem is to reference Article 7 of the EU Citizens' Rights Directive, which is the one that says you can deport people. And so the lib solution to this is, no, but you can deport people. It's fine. You can deport people. Again, a theme has recurred here where he's like, no, I don't. The deporting thing, you can do that. That's fine. You can definitely do that in the EU. It's all good. It's fine. Isn't the EU great? Isn't it this great progressive beacon where we can deport people and everyone in it is white?
James O'Brien's chosen solution to this, to winning the referendum, would have been to assure the racists that don't worry, the EU is very racist.
I mean, in fairness...
No, which is true.
Yeah.
Which is true, but that would be his solution. We can only combat the racists within the Leave vote by assuring them that we will make sure that the EU is increasingly racist.
I mean,
just gets more and more racist.
Yeah, they're turning a big dial that says racism and looking back at the audience for approval. They are doing that as well. So yeah, there's a lot of questions. Terrorites asking a good one, which would be curious about how James O'Brien thinks whiteness/white supremacy functions. I suspect he doesn't think about it very much, but he will try and bluster his way through it if you ever get the chance to ask.
No, when he thinks about it, it's like Homer Simpson. It's like his brain is just the monkey with the symbols banging away at the symbol.
You can hear the gears turning. So he talks about in the 2015 election, Labour had aped some of the rhetoric around immigration, and he said that neither party was minded to explain that enacting Article 7 would be uneconomical and largely pointless because the sponging EU migrant was largely mythical. Again, this is one of these things where James O'Brien proceeded to lose his shit at the guy who attempted to explain it when he tried to explain it. So, I don't know, maybe he doesn't care about it, and he's talking about there isn't any votes in tackling tabloid tropes about non-existent or grossly exaggerated problems. I would simply point to the 2017 general election result, which implied that there may have been some votes in doing that. Like, I mean...
Yeah, it turned out there was, and that's why the entire media then doubled down to make sure that could never happen again.
Yeah. Do we think he's fake or genuinely lib-brained? Genuinely lib-brained, but he does a public thing where he's even more lib-brained than he actually is, I think. And yeah, John Duncan guaranteed James O'Brien views white supremacy as just overt Nazis and then has shallow analysis of representation and fuck all else. Probably. I do think that most British liberals do get to the Nazis a bad component of it, except less certain of that as time goes on, but a lot of them do at least manage to get over that line.
Well, they're deep down, they have the thing which is, it's worse to be called a racist than to, like, interrogate what racism is and what elements of your behaviour might be racist. If you call James O'Brien racist for something he said or did, he would lose his shit.
Yeah. The accusation is worse than the act. Again, it's tone, not content, writ large. Yeah, again. There's this section where he says
it's still to 30% through the book.
It still amazes me that only a year after the vote, people who was still happy that Britain is leaving the EU had already been reduced to presenting, in the long run, I think we'll be fine as some sort of victory. And my note here is, it's almost as if there was something else going on. And if you were actually a curious liberal, like, media type, you would have looked into it. Like... there's so much like, man, I wonder what was happening here. I'm the curious liberal who categorizes everything and understands things. I'm the guy understander. Like,
one of the fundamental ways that James O'Brien works though is this thing where his show functions with him every morning being surprised about something that anyone paying attention would not have been surprised about. So this week he has been surprised that women face violence from men, and that women find it do not have a good experience walking on the streets of Britain. Oh. He goes, I've been so shocked by my wife and my friends and my family telling me this, and you think, this today. 2021 that's when you've realised that. That's how we work.
Big bad 2021. In fact, we're going to get to two chapters on LGBT people and women. There's chapters on women. He's got binders full of them. And you're going to hate those chapters as much as I hate it. I put out some of my frustrations with his talking around trans people there. There's a really funny bit. I think we're going to have a light moment here, where I'll show you what I mean. Think of a prominent Remainer, an Amuna perhaps, or a Subri, a Clark, or even a Cable. I will point out that none of these people are prominent anymore, and that's incredibly funny to me. Women, how do they work? James O'Brien, that's his next book. Oh no, we're going to leave his next book. Let's not. Oh no. I feel it. I can feel it. Actually, I say that. We are, unless Mick has anything to add on chapter 2, about to hit the LGBT chapter.
Oh, the one thing I wanted to say about this is it's another style thing, right? But he's incapable of thinking of any new analogies. He's been paid a decent amount of money for this book, and he goes, I wrote in the TLS shortly after the result that Remainers to turn up to a knife fight with battered boxing gloves. And you just go, he's so proud of how trite and just, like, workaday his writing and thinking is.
Yeah, so
look at this amazing analogy I wrote.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this now, that most of my style notes that were for myself are trite, trite, cliched bullshit. A lot of it is bullshit actually, but those are the ones that I'm telling you mostly. So,
but I actually think there's an interesting philosophical element to to the fact that he will say an analogy that is so obvious and so well and think it's clever. It's because he honestly believes he is the cleverest man in the room whenever he's anywhere, because his job is to fight in a gladiatorial pit where anyone who enters it has been, as we said earlier in the stream, has been carefully selected to be weak in some way for him to easily defeat. So it's given him this thing of thinking his brain is an incredible, like his brain is just pulsating with power.
Yeah, which it is not, just to be clear. But, okay, everyone, are we ready? It's time. The LGBT chapter opens with our favourite guy. It's the Orwell klaxon. It's Orwell time. Yes! Oh, yes, it's happening. The Orwell is happening. And one of my favourite, I picked out one particular, pretty much immediately, there's a line in Orwell's 1984. Over, done. I couldn't believe this was real. But yeah, everyone, air horn. Yeah, it's not easy to simultaneously acknowledge the unerring accuracy of Orwell's insight. Again, I mean, lots of question marks around how accurate Orwell insights may be.
And the line he's quoting is about the 2-minute tape.
Yeah.
He's on LBC. LBC is an infinite series of 2-minute tapes.
Yeah,
that's all it.
Yeah, it's not good. So yeah, clap for Orwell. We need to clap. I mean, Orwell did have binders full of gays that he submitted to MI5. Yes, Orwell. This is officially an anti-Orwell stream for a variety of reasons. Chief among which is the binders full of people that he snitched on. Also, he absolutely isn't a fan of all of Orwell's ideology. Yeah, I suspect if you ask James O'Brien, he prefers Orwell's later work.
These people.
Oh, sorry.
These people never quote. Done out in Paris and London, like I think the 60 just said. They never quote Road to Wigan Pier. They only ever do 1984 on Animal Farm.
Yeah.
You know, Homage Catalonia, you're not going to hear about that.
Yeah, and yeah, I could pick better works of his, I suspect. Although I suspect they don't know they exist. Again,
no, they know the ones they did in high school.
Yeah, there's the weird stuff here about how he's like, I'm completely fine with gay people. It's all fine, actually. You know, none of my rights are threatened by a couple of blokes falling into bed together. Fine, whatever. It's just weird. It's a weird quote.
He's been to several gay people's houses, and none of them smelled of poppers.
Yeah, that's basically the understanding that we're gonna have to take away from this. I'm gonna really like a lot of this is just typical lib boilerplate stuff that it's whatever, it's what you'd expect.
There's a weird bit where he talks about being a sidekick to a BBC presenter and essentially just being a like nodding Motley-like figure.
Yeah, there's the thing where he's like, I am going to own the homophobe by saying when did they choose to be straight, which is the most basic fucking own you can land on a homophobe, and he's very proud of this incredibly basic
and this is the chapter where he reveals the true extent of his West Wing brain, in that he has a bit from the episode where Bartlett takes down a homophobe and he keeps it in the studio with him in case a homophobe rings up.
Yeah. Yes, here's the thing. I'm going to read this section where he describes 3 separate religious faiths. And I'm going to ask you to determine whether one of these things is not quite like the other. I've spoken to Orthodox Jews who believe that God wants them to keep separate fridges for meat and dairy products, Jehovah's Witnesses who believe that blood transfusions are sinful, and British Muslims who maintain that Western military interventions in countries they've never been near somehow justify acts of terror in their hometowns. One of these fucking things is not like the other. Excuse me. Like, there is, like... So far as I understand it, the other 2 things are actually doctrinal requirements of those faiths. There is no requirement in any sect of Islam that means you have to go... The Western foreign policy justifies that sort of thing. Like, what the fuck is that? Like... it's just one of those... That's a passage that just stuck out so much to me. And yes, Tara writes, also it's awful because it's predicated on queerness is bad. Yeah, exactly, right? It's a really, really bad way to frame this. And and also, why does having been to a country mean that it has more moral value? Interesting questions. All very, very interesting questions. I sadly can't answer on behalf of the author, although you can obviously infer from other things that he says what his answer might be. And then he talks about like this fox hunting thing where someone was completely unprepared for a question he had on fox hunting, where he asked if why are you focused on saving foxes? Why don't you save like rats and squirrels? And it's like, well, there are environmental impacts, first of all. Like, it's an incredibly stupid question. And yeah, exactly. Why is he equating Orthodox Jews keeping food separate with Jehovah's Witnesses rejecting life-saving surgery? I don't know. It's just...
the section where he talks about section 28 is a particularly he says, it makes me wonder about the motivation behind legislation like section 28 of the Local Government Act 1988. And he goes on and he's sort of saying, I wonder why they did it. Is it because they wanted to stop people from suddenly deciding they were gay? And it's like, no, we know the reasons why. It's because they hated gay people.
Yeah, like...
That's the reason why. Why do you always have to come up with these like complicated, convoluted psychological explanations? Like, let's try and understand why racists are racist, or let's try and understand why homophobes are homophobes. Maybe we should spend less time trying to understand them.
Yeah, and also, as Solinka Meyer is pointing out in the chat, it was homophobia. It is not... Like, I hate to be the it's simple guy. It is sometimes very fucking simple. Like, you don't need to do 878 different iterations of an experiment to try and work it out. It's really simple. Like, yeah, what do you have to wonder? Like, they said it. They said it explicitly, even. Like, it just drives me mad. Again, this is... the refusal to research rearing its head again, I think. Yet again.
Compared Kelvin Mackenzie to George Orwell. That was an interesting one.
That's a curious one. Oh, we're at the section... Well, I'm at the section. that's just after the Mackenzie bit, where it's like... Where I'm like, how do I begin deconstructing this? So I'm going to read some passages for you. Is
this the change my mind 3 times one?
Yeah, we're going to work our way through it. So, in short, every time I speak to a trans woman, I come away convinced that they deserve to be treated like someone born with female genitals, even if they are in possession of a penis. And every time a non-trans woman explains to me that she feels frightened by the prospect of a predatory male pretending to be a trans woman in order to gain access to restricted female spaces, I feel the pendulum of my opinion swinging in their support. I'm not exaggerating. In the space of 4 calls to the program, I can quite easily change my mind 3 times. I don't even know how to begin. Like, I genuinely don't know how to begin deconstructing, and it does get worse. I don't even. And also, the genital obsession again.
Like, genital obsession, which they all have for some reason. It's bizarre. But the thing for me that changed my mind 3 times in one show. What he's saying is he has no principles. He is some kind of just free-floating particulate, right? It's like, so the logical conclusion to what he's saying is that if you got a persuasive enough Nazi in a room with him, he would be a Nazi.
Yeah.
Which I know Godwin's, you start shouting Godwin's law at me for saying that, right? But fundamentally, he's saying if Goebbels was in the room with him and could persuade him that the race laws were actually quite a sensible idea, then grand, you know?
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't even know how to begin deconstructing the stuff he says about trans people, because, like, it is... Okay, so... there's this section. I'm gonna read out the whole thing. Self-identification. The legal process by which a biological male can assume every right currently enjoyed by biological females, again, choice way to phrase that, simply by stating that she, and he writes it as she, but like S/he, is a woman, is clearly problematic. No, that's not clear to anyone at all, unless you have some view you would like to express on the matter that, you know, you might be shy about expressing.
He's basically, the thing about him here, he doesn't have the guts to say what he actually thinks, because he knows that this is a situation where he could get a lot of heat from either side of what is a falsely created, media created debate around people's right to exist. But he doesn't want to say it. So what he strongly hints what he believes while going, oh yeah, but I might believe this other thing.
Yeah, I think I will let people draw their own conclusions about what you think he believes, but I have a conclusion of my own.
It's a deliberate attempt to avoid clarity on this particular issue. He feels like he has to write about it, but he doesn't want to have the guts to say what he really thinks.
Yeah, which, again, he's the one talking about how cowardly people are for not calling into his show. There's this quote here. Secondly, he's explaining, like, oh, why do I lean towards supporting self-ID? Which this is the part where he starts, like, obscuring what he actually thinks. So secondly, I'd also point to the fact that the patron saint of 21st century bigotry, Donald Trump, of course, because he's the first hate preaching figure of the 21st century, has reached very early for trans people in the military as an acceptable target for the type of discrimination that has thankfully been rooted out of many other areas of public life. Again, deconstruction required here. So only really inclined to support self-ID because to own Donald Trump, basically. And also, like, he's like, no, but thankfully other people are not getting treated like trans people. Thankfully that's not happening. Like, just the psychic damage that I took here. Like, I almost, like, completely lost I almost was tempted to he's blocked me, so I couldn't even at him if I wanted to. But I was like, you motherfucker. Like, yeah, like, exactly, yeah, Taylor writes, exactly. If we find that place, I promise, we will send people there. Oh, okay, Discord's doing the thing again, but, like, yeah, it's complete fucking fiction nonsense, as usual. Hey, Mick, I'm back.
Hey, I just...
I sound more resigned every time it happens. Yeah, okay, we're back. But yeah, it's wild.
The thing I was going to say is that he just isn't willing to take a position, and like someone was just saying in the chat, I haven't got it up on my screen at the moment. Can he oscillate fast enough to be a populist for everyone? Is the thing, and of course it's about, for him, can I be orange man Trump definitely bad, right? It's like he's the classic, oh, now Biden's in charge, it'll be fine guy.
Yeah, it's exactly that, and it's just, and Jordan DH pointed out in the chat that he only takes a stand on the LGBT issues which are already won. Yeah, where the...
that was the point I wanted to make. He now will talk about Section 28 and say this was appalling, or would talk about how the Sun under Kelvin McKenzie, ran a campaign of unalloyed hate against gay people, or how Andrew Neil, when he was at the Sunday Times, wrote gay denialist, published gay denialist stuff that was really damaging in a serious health crisis. But he can't do it now because he hasn't got the guts to do it now.
Yeah.
Like, he will wait till society decides that, hey, this minority shouldn't have been treated in the way they have. The James O'Brien of 20 years' time will probably be going, well, I can't believe people were so horrendous to trans people.
Yeah.
But the James O'Brien of now can't do that because it would be too risky for him.
Yeah, exactly.
As brave as he thinks he is.
Yeah, and then he uses the Lucy Meadows case as an example of why. But ultimately, with the caveat that I am still not comfortable with telling women that they have to throw open their changing rooms and toilets to all biologically male people who self-identify as female. What he's essentially said here is that he thinks trans women are men. That is essentially the thing that he said pretty explicitly there. I don't know whether his position, and he's talking about Lucy Meadows, and yeah, I basically, what Taylor Wright has written in the chat is what my note was. Just absolutely needs to not talk about it ever again. Like, just drove me mad.
Yeah, he uses that case to just make it, to again, coming back to this thing with him, it's all about personalities and saying, Richard Littlejohn is bad, which is true. Right, yeah. Richard Littlejohn is one of the biggest shits in British media. But all he's doing is using that and that case to say, he's bad, but I'm good.
Yeah.
That's it. That's as far as it goes. The death of a woman is not really... he'd make out that it really emotionally affected him, but the way it's used here does not make me feel that.
Yeah, and there is just a lot of stuff here where he says stuff that will wind up the chat correctly. Like he's basically trying really hard not to say the thing he wants to say about self-ID. Like this is the one time where he tries really, really fucking hard not to say it. And yeah, I think some of the quotes we picked out might give you a clue as to what he actually thinks about the matter. I think we'll let you figure that one out. I do also hate the chapter 4 title because I've got it on my screen. So everyone, guess what chapter 4 is about? It's about political correctness.
Has it gone mad? Who's to say?
Who can say? Political correctness has gone so mad that you're watching this stream. I can't even. I've gone mad. By this point of the book, I fully just gave up writing notes.
Yeah, he
line
starts
by line.
We're talking about the fact that he can only use cliche examples or cliche analogies. He starts with one of the most cliche things ever, which is Peter Cook talking about satire and saying that the Establishment Club was modelled on the Berlin cabarets, which did so much to stop the rise of Hitler and prevent the outbreak of the Second World War, which was funny when Peter Cook said it in the 1960s, right? But it's boring now, right? Yeah, okay, we get it, satire doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
So in the place of satire, we've got James O'Brien,
who we must not satirize under any circumstances. When were you last offended on someone else's behalf? This is an interesting example that he draws out here.
This is screwed up.
So I'm gonna read this section. I'm going to read both. I think both paragraphs here would be helpful. This morning I saw a Facebook post in which the black politician Diane Abbott's face had been superimposed onto the body of a morbidly obese woman in an ill-fitting superhero bikini-style costume. The punchline was, "Beware of Blunder Woman." That's quotes from me and from him. And I took a moment to ponder why I felt the person responsible, an Irish newspaper journalist in his early 60s, had crossed a line, and precisely where my own moral compass had drawn that line. Would I have felt the same if the target of the joke had been white? On reflection, yes. Which, again, is kind of, yeah. Abbott receives industrial amounts of racist and misogynistic abuse every day, some might say by some of his colleagues, but who can say? But here it was the overt sexualization of the image and the judgment of her perceived ugliness that offended me. Would I have felt the same if the target had been a man? No. As a straight man, my entire life is effectively free from any threat of sexual violence. I had an ugly eye infection a couple of years ago, which prompted a glut of hilarious full-freight photoshopping from internet trolls. Don't think that was any of us, to be fair, but nothing like an image designed to render a woman simultaneously sexual, vulnerable, and unattractive. So I've read the entire 2 paragraphs for you all because I wanted to give you maximum context there. This man is really trying to hurt me specifically. Yeah, this is why I read the books, so I take all the psychic damage for you all. But I don't even. This is another one of those paragraphs where I highlighted and I was like, I don't even know where we start with this because it's just. I can't even wrap my brain around some of this.
But again, it's he takes. The greatest example of sustained and systematic racism in British politics, which are the decades of attacks on Diane Abbott, both from internet trolls, as he would put it, and media figures. We all know, the time when she was having an issue with her diabetes and struggled with some figures and was then just castigated constantly for that. Whereas, others, Priti Patel, for instance, would not be for starting a press conference by garbling her numbers. There's definitely a double standard there. He takes it and he just takes it all out, removes any context and just goes, here's this one example and here's what I, a white heterosexual man, thought of it. What would you have thought of it, right? But it's completely removed of context. It's completely removed from ideas of misogyny and of attacks on her particularly. It's just taken as this one little, interesting, neat little example for him to use.
Yeah, again, this is the thing where he hasn't identified a structure again. He keeps not doing this. It's... Yeah, I think the less time we spend on this, the less likely I am to get banned from Twitch. So, Oh god, and then he does this little the little bit where he's like, what if someone dunked on me for saying superhero and not superheroine, and like he's trying to say political correctness has gone mad, and why does he say heterosexual so much? Who knows?
Yeah, that's a really good point. He loves to just make sure that's very clear. Very straight, James O'Brien.
Yeah, we will not be speculating further on that matter. That's for others to think about. But yeah, I kind of glossed over a lot of the political correctness thing just because it was driving me mad by this point in the book. So unless Mick has anything in particular...
No, all I would say about this chapter is it's everything you would expect. And again, all the transcripts are someone making a really crushingly cliched racist or culture war-y point, and then him taking the most obvious route to try and diffuse it, but in a way where you just go, are you kidding me? Again, always avoiding any kind of structural analysis.
Yeah, here's a great example. And where the mainstream media leads, and mainstream media is in scare quotes, because, I don't know, that's a whole thing. Social media follows with even less policing of facts. Yes, but which one of those has more structural power, and which one's lack of policing of facts impacts more things?
This is another wider question. The wider thing that you see every day in the British media is that they will always do this thing where they talk about social media as if, like you say, as if social media has more power. But often, the power imbued into social media comes from, for instance, the don't at me blue tickers who turn shit posters into something in their minds. Like, if we take pictures of them and give them massive foreheads, they're like, oh, look at how I am. Look at how this show, what this tells you about the culture of impoliteness. This tells you very little other than that we think you are a dickhead.
Yeah.
That's the beginning and end of it.
Yeah.
But almost all the power they give social media is there, so they can deny the power they actually have. That's the whole point of it. Social media has to be the enemy so that the media can say, well, social media is pretty bad, we're much better than that.
Yeah, and Sleeping Dragon's asking, out of curiosity, approximately what % of this book is transcript versus actual new writing?
40% new writing, 60% new writing, 40% transcript, I'd say.
Yeah, I got to skip a lot of the text because I ain't reading all that. I'm happy for him, or sorry that it happened, but I ain't reading it. I don't need to read the nonsense that my most lib-brained uni friends post on their Facebook all the time. It's just not happening. Apologies to any of my lib-brained uni friends who may be watching.
We're at the halfway point and we've hit feminism.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I can't. God, that's lazy.
Oh, second page of this. Second page of this, he mentions he's a straight white man again.
Yeah, it keeps happening. Oh, good lord! He talks about this person who says you can't celebrate Christmas anymore, and it's just wild. He picks out all of these. Yeah, James O'Brien is so deeply intellectually lazy. Is there a chapter about Corbyn? There isn't a chapter about Corbyn. There are precisely three mentions.
2 lines.
There are 3 mentions of Jeremy Corbyn. 2 of them are very close together. They are both predictably extremely negative, and we will get to them. We'll make sure we get to that if we end up getting bogged down. But I don't think there's really a lot in the political correctness chapter worth talking about. Oh wait, hold on. He's been so relentlessly and unquestionably exposed to it for so long that he's never stopped to wonder what he actually personally means by the words he routinely uses.
Yeah, no, we know that. There's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah. We're getting told. Oh no. It's spreading.
It's surround sound now.
Oh yeah.
My sound is intermittent.
Chapter 5 being entitled Feminism prompted another oh no from me on the chat. The chapter titles in this just really fucking worry me, man. They worry me.
Well, the other thing about the chapter titles is the way that it just shows also his ego. He's like, right now I'm going to handle this thing that many people have devoted, whole books or even many books to. But don't worry, short chapter from me, done.
Yep, that's it. Job done. There's this bit where I was like, wait, what? Is this true? So apparently Jordan Peterson believes that the natural state of human hierarchies and relationships would mirror those of lobsters. Didn't know that because I don't really pay attention to what noted dipshit Jordan Peterson says.
That's a notorious Peterson thing.
Okay. Oh dear. He starts tackling incels, which is, and then there's this. Okay, so there's this line here that I'm going to mention, where he suggests that spending a little less time obsessing online about cucks, Muslims, no-go zones, and social justice warriors would free these most delicate of flowers to work a little harder at being likable and hence fanciable. And my point here is that you're not exactly a prize catch, James O'Brien. Like, I'm not saying anything, but, like, you're a professional dipshit for a living, just the same as me, so don't give anyone any advice on being likable or fanciable. Just, like, gonna put that out there for you, for suppose, just a rare dunk on the author from me. Like, just ridiculous nonsense, like, and, yeah, and he talks about, like, oh, if we've learned anything from the past few years, it's that progress can be reversed. And I'm like, did we learn that in the last few years, or did we learn that before at some point? I don't know. Again, research. Do research. Read books. Not Harry Potter. For goodness sake, please read books. And don't read this book if you're in the audience. I cannot encourage you enough.
One of the very few books he's read is The Handmaid's Tale, so that comes up in the Feminism chapter.
Yes, that does. And, yeah, given how wildly people misunderstand that, usually maybe explains some other things in here. This is another thing where he's like, wow, I'm so surprised that women get treated like this. He seems to have forgotten about this, then rehashed it recently. Like, this is a whole thing where he's like, man, I'm so surprised that women get treated like this in the workplace. Someone ought to do something. Again, in the context of the past week or so that we've been having, is maybe wasn't the easiest reading to have.
Oh god, this bit is insane. This bit is insane, where he says, the line where he says, it seems to me that modern British and American people were somehow made of different stuff to the Germans who enabled and executed Nazism in the 1930s. But then Donald Trump started. It's like, the minute Donald Trump arrived, he suddenly realised that fascism could be possible again.
Yeah,
nothing in the preceding 40 years of British politics could have let him know that.
There's a line just before that where he says, most accounts of how societies fall to fascism cite rampant sexism as a key indicator. Again, could have done with a citation here. And there may have been other factors at play that intersected with that. Who can say? An actual analysis of fascism probably quite a bit beyond James O'Brien. But
James O'Brien's watched The Great Escape every Christmas, and that's all he needs to know about fascism.
Yeah. Again, he picks out what a weird example where he talks about someone defending, I've forgotten who it was. Financial Times journalist. No, that's not the thing. Basically, the President's Club dinner, right? That whole thing. And he gets a caller who defends that entire thing, and he says, one of my callers, and some of my callers initially tried to defend the sleazebag's conduct, and I had a bit of fun listening to their splutter and confusion when asked whether they would have felt the same way had the offenders been, say, mini cab drivers of Pakistani origin. Again, why he picks that example to try and own the dipshits is interesting. I would say it's an interesting choice. And yeah, Sleeping Dragons with James O'Brien, who voted for Boris Johnson to be London Mayor, is very surprised by racism and sexism. Yeah, again, incredibly surprised. How could this happen? Someone should have called the police. Apparently, do not do that. Like,
there's a line I really enjoyed. I say enjoyed, hated to the core of my very being, where he says, "I am all too aware that I sometimes come across an insufferable prig in exchanges like this." Yeah. And my note reads, "And yet you still do it."
Yeah. No, my note there was, you're clearly not aware of it because you keep doing it.
I'm aware that I do this, but I keep doing it because it makes me money.
Yeah, okay, here's the line, which apparently he's repeated this week. I was staggered to learn from callers and from women I know and love in my personal life how normal it was for a boss to squeeze their breast during a drunken staff photo, or how often they had to fight off colleagues at Christmas parties. Now, James O'Brien is a journalist, and I'm not going to name any particular journalists here, but I wonder if he was surprised by certain people compared to octopuses who can say, whether he's surprised by that or has ever mentioned that before, or whether he's part of the general pattern of silence on that, who can say, let him speak for himself. You can do advanced Twitter
and there are
sections.
there are many more than the octopuses as well who are still getting away with it.
But again, not the libel zone. That's end participation stream when we do that. That's that's before the insufferable prig. And number 6 is just gonna drive me mad. Chapter 6 title drove me absolutely insane. Nanny states and classical liberals. Oh, it's just I can't cope at this point. By this point, I'm just fully lost my mind, and
this is a mess. He goes on this weird long thing about fixed odds betting terminals, and says like because he's adopted, he could imagine a sliding doors moment where if he hadn't have been adopted, he might have become the sort of person that's fooled by fixed odds betting terminals. But don't worry, he was adopted, so he's fine.
Yeah, and also I'm going to read this bit out.
How gambling addiction works.
Yeah, I'm going to read this bit out because it explains a lot about James O'Brien. I remember making a rare foray into my student union at the London School of Economics, so that's explaining one part of it. Oddly, for someone who loved debating at school, so he was a uni debate bro at LSE. Again, that explains approximately 85% of what we're having to deal with here. LSE, big red flag, not the good kind of red flag. Yeah. So that, if you know anything about the unis in the UK for people outside of the UK, that explains a lot of the lib brain at play here. And he talks about the debating society. Its most enthusiastic practitioners seemed either old and bitter beyond their years on the right, or angry about everything on the left. But, like, he's supposed to be the curious, liberal, fucking, big brain journalist. Have you ever wondered why they might have been angry? Like, for goodness sake. And then there's this point here, he talks about, like, if I didn't have some sort of state support, I couldn't go to uni, and I'd already secured part-time work, and would, on graduating, probably be a much more productive taxpayer with a degree than I would have been without. That's not the point of education at all. And this is the part where I start, like, losing my shit.
But this comes back to what I said earlier, which people may or may not have heard because of my audio being into men, but like I was saying earlier, was the fact that he has taken inside a lot of Daily Mail talking points, which he doesn't realise he has. So that's why he thinks about productive economic units and people who are good chaps and people who aren't good chaps. Like, all of that is in there, and he doesn't realise it. He cannot ever look at his beliefs and actually unpick them. He thinks he does, but he never actually does.
Yeah, and he's talking about here, like, this, remember, was when everything university-related was pretty much free, but decades before tuition fees had become a political hot potato. Just, like, fuck off, man. You don't need to, like, I just got mad at this because I was in the first cohort of 9K students, and so I'm not happy. I'm not happy as a general rule. Class system, good chaps versus bad chaps. Damn, Mark solved there. And he was apparently taught to be grateful for what he had and to be mindful of those less fortunate. My point is that lesson didn't stick.
It's John Rawls' time. It's John Rawls'
yes,
time.
It's John Rawls' time. Fuck. I had to at John immediately because I know John loathes Rawls, and so I had to do it. The philosopher John... I'm going to read the entire Rawls paragraph, so everyone buckle up. The philosopher John Rawls' famous Veil of Ignorance posits the idea that a just system can only be constructed by people completely ignorant of their position within it. I'm not going to comment. I'm going to keep reading. I'm so desperate to...
Soldier on.
Yeah. In other words, you're not going to endorse a system of law, or by extension, of tax or government that unfairly discriminates against a section of society you could conceivably be in yourself. I simplify outrageously, as an understatement, but my veil of adoption makes me imagine that it's me with a different backstory tempted by the get-rich-quick lies of a fixed-odd betting terminal, or the temporary hit to my brain's pleasure centre provided by a cigarette. Perhaps it's fanciful, but I find it very easy to imagine the unadopted me falling foul of the myriad financial, medical, and chemical bear traps laid by the champions of state corporate harm maximisation. And so, when it comes to the so-called nanny state, I cut my political cloth accordingly. I mean, you know, it's, as John said something in the chat, because, but yeah, it's. I don't think he's really properly understood the veil of ignorance there, quite so well. And then he's like, the veil. It's just, yeah, that paragraph means nothing. He didn't understand the thought experiment.
And also, it's a weird thing about, like, basically he's just sort of boasting. I was lucky, so I'm not as easily led as you morons who smoke cigarettes or whatever.
Yeah,
like, it really is a weird kind of boasting.
Yeah, and it's as Jackonaut points out, self-fulfilling fallacy. Therefore, ipso, it's impossible to make good laws. Yeah, who can? What's the point of all this? Yeah, John's essay is incoming because I am excited to hear from John Dodgman on this matter if he's still in the chat. Because I hope he stuck around for that, because I highlighted that just for him. But yeah,
God, it's classical. The classical liberal section is awful.
Yeah, anything classical liberal is just not really for me. But, yeah, there's just it is just a nonsense chapter throughout this, and he talks about the sugar tax as a whole thing, and it's just. It's just exhausting, and like the one where it's like Gary and Staines, like, it's not Jamie Oliver's business what my kids eat. And
whose business is it? Mine and their mum's and theirs. Okay, do they take packed lunch into school? They've left school now, but no, they didn't. They both had school dinners. And who decided was on the school dinner menu? You, your wife, or your kids? It's just like, fuck. Can you imagine just listening to it?
And also, I love Gary here, who's like, if I told you my wife was a dinner lady, would you believe me? Which is such a play, to be fair. Fair play to Gary from Staines. Like, that at least he went for it. It's, is he trying to appeal some sort of popular appeal by getting his position on things confused? Maybe. He's the ultimate populist in a way. Like... Yeah, shoot your shot, Gary. Absolutely. Like, if you're winding him up, I'm absolutely okay with that.
My least favourite line in this whole chapter was where he said, "Right-wing newspapers as ever make everything worse." And then my note just says, "What does he think LBC is?"
Yeah, like, what is
what
LBC?
Does he think it is?
Yeah, it would have been a good question. Chapter 7 has a great title. It's The Age Gap. Uh-oh. Who's getting cancelled? Who is getting cancelled?
This wasn't what I thought it was. I thought it was going to be much worse, but still pretty bad.
Teo writes, you have assumed correct. He did not link it to anything around that, because that would be an actual analysis, and he does not do that. He doesn't do it. Of course not. You know. But yeah, it's the age gap, and he describes his background here. Born in 1987, so he points out that that's Gen X, 1966 to 1980. I'm not sure if that's quite where we've agreed where those lines are, but whatever. Into ineffably middle-class comfort, I took these things for granted. He talks about, like, having wealth, essentially, here, and having opportunity. And I make the note here that somehow Gen X are a worse cohort than boomers. And also F's in the chat for the millennials 1981 to 2000, according to this. I think we've updated that line. And there's this exchange here where he talks to someone who's like, well, when I was young, when me and my wife were young, we got our house really easily. We just worked 50 hours a week and we got our house, and you know, our house was only £3,500 with Doris, yeah. Like, it's only £3,500, so, you know, it was only 2.5 times our salary. And James Brown points out, yes, it was only 2.5 times my salary, and now it's like in the tens of times now, probably quite a bit higher depending where you want to live. And he's like, I'm not sure why exchanges like the following are commonplace whenever the subject of housing costs comes up. And I'm like, yes, It's a perfectly fine exchange. But why did you, rail against the guy who was going to try and solve the problem is really, something that maybe he should interrogate about himself, but that would require thought.
And we return to the central theme of this stream, which is he will say, well, I don't know why these conversations are so common. I don't know, some kind of structural analysis could be useful there, but time for that. On to the next transcript.
Yeah, and here's the thing. He talks about the age gap, and he essentially summarizes the problem of an aging population, which is that your working population goes down, the population that you need to support through pensions goes up, and that a lot of that working population haven't saved any money. Again, structural analysis would help him figure out why that might be the case, but we move forward, and he talks about all of the wealth is being concentrated with one particular generation, and we're going to have a catastrophic crisis in social care. And it's gee, I wonder if someone was trying to present ideas that would solve these problems in part, and how James reacted to them. Again, a lot of this is me reacting to him being I understand the problems, but I will never support any solution to them under any circumstances, or even understand where the origin of the problem is. And then he has an exchange with this millennial who is fortunate, very fortunate, given that he's the generation he's in, to be earning more than £80,000, and he cries about, why am I getting a tax rise under Jeremy Corbyn? I hate it. I've done his voice for him. Didn't mean to give him such a weedy voice, but I guess it came out. Whenever I do a centrist complainer voice, it comes out like that. It's just, just ridiculous bullshit throughout, really, in this chapter. This is the chapter where he tries to show off his range here and talk about generational issues. He doesn't understand the actual source of the problem, so he just needs to stop.
He also acts like he struggled to get his foot in the door of Fleet Street. That was a well-known Telegraph journalist.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not convinced by that.
Okay, so you guys got my thing where I wrote. I'm going to read the note out for you all. Oh, fuck off, you stupid prick. Don't sneer at people who saw someone offer something and wanted to take it. And he's talking about, how, young professionals in offices are too well educated to fall for, the right wing, but they fall for... but instead fondly imagine that the Labour Party leader, Jeremy Corbyn, will somehow be able to deliver a brave new world. Again, there's this fucking thing where he thinks that because you work in an office, you must have some sort of privileged class position. Mm-hmm. Again, not fucking true. What the fuck is this guy talking about? He's they're degree educated, they work in an office, they must be doing well, and therefore everything that they support Jeremy Corbyn for must be bad. I mean, they're acting like Jeremy Corbyn was trying to trick people. I think he was the least likely to attempt to trick people in the history of this country for some time.
This was so well covered on an episode of Britanology, part of the Trash Future Wider Universe, where they were talking about the way that, you've got a guy who owns a plumbing firm who has a massive Range Rover that says plumber 10 on the plates, but he will say he's working class, and columnists will go, oh yeah, obviously working class guy, he's a plumber. Whereas millennials working in an office who've got no fucking money. Well, it's an office, so an office job was middle class in the 50s, so it must still be middle class now.
Yeah.
It's just
no dynamism.
Their class, their perception of class boundaries hasn't changed at all. So a delivery rider in the inner city is not working class, but a guy who lives in a big house but is near a pit village is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like how American conservatives think that charisma and popular appeal is cheating. In a way, they think actually offering people what they want is some horrible cheat and unacceptable, partially because it threatens their class interest. In fairness, in large part of the British commentariat, but yeah, it's interesting what he thinks is equally ridiculous to people blaming immigrants. Apparently believing in mild social democratic reform, same as being racist towards immigrants. And he follows this up with, so these are the new normals. Bosses get to do more or less what they want, while workers either blame their plight on immigration or ignore it altogether. simply because the cost of simply staying afloat has become so high. Again, might the aforementioned Jeremy Corbyn have had solutions to this problem were he allowed to fucking go on and try? Interesting that he followed it up pretty much immediately with that. I just wanted to note that. And I think, there's the next mention of Jeremy Corbyn where I'm going to read the entire paragraph. If I'm right, and I hope I'm not, then we're heading towards an unprecedented reckoning. The younger sections of society, whose taxes will effectively subsidise the care of the ageing sections, are being required to work in circumstances and for wages vastly inferior to their predecessors, without being offered any permanent stake in society. He's actually done a fairly good analysis here, incidentally. This is quite a good go at it from him. This is the best that he does. The older sections, meanwhile, cling to the illusion that the travails of their children and grandchildren are largely self-inflicted. If nothing else, it unravels the riddle of Jeremy Corbyn's popularity that still causes such bafflement in so many corners of the political and media establishment. He at least articulates the sense that things can't go on like this. And, he talks about how demographics will crush us. And I'm like, you still not understood it, and you went immediately back to deliberate ignorance, so you can just shut the fuck up, James O'Brien. That's my primary takeaway from this. And Japan too in the UK, there are a lot of unfortunate parallels between Japan and the UK, not least the racism.
Chapter 8.
Oh yeah, here we go. It's Trump, everyone. It's time. It's time. Let's see what
this opens with another classic, O'Brien thinks everyone else is stupid thing, where he says, in 1990, a little-known American lawyer and author called Mike Godwin formulated a pithy little adage that will become known as Godwin's Law. Who hasn't heard of that now? Yeah,
everyone on the internet who was on the internet from the year 2000 has now heard this. Orange Man, good for book sales. That's right. That is true, and I kind of enjoy his understanding of America described here. Trump had, by then, been president for just 8 months. It still beggars belief that he could have so quickly created an environment in which violent racists, anti-Semites, and Nazi ideologues could march unashamedly and unhooded on American streets. My note here is simply, have you heard of this place called America? This is not fucking news to anyone, that America has these problems, and God...
We're back to ahistoricism again, though, right? Because he doesn't. He had an expensive education, but it's completely wasted on him, and because he knows nothing of history. To just go, it's pretty surprising that fascist conditions can spring up very quickly. It's it didn't just happen in Nazi Germany, James. It's happened in many, many countries, many times over, many times since.
Yeah, and Taylor Wright's making the point that did he not talk about the EDL earlier? Yes, he did. And what that might imply about the UK at the time of the rise of the EDL, couldn't possibly say. Couldn't possibly say. This is just mostly a really trite, and this is where trite came up a lot, attempt to deconstruct Trumpism. Where he's like, I hate alternative facts. It's all sorts of stuff like that. Then he gets into the Sadiq Khan versus Donald Trump discourse, which was obviously, if you recall, were just fucking tedious, and they had the giant baby balloon up, which I suppose was kind of funny for a day, but
this bit where he says, for all the books I've read by the likes of Primo Levi, George Orwell, and Hannah Arendt, A, if he's read them, he didn't understand them, and B, if he's read them, what he says by the likes of, what he's done is he's looked at his bookshelf, and now those are the 3 books he has on those topics. He just makes out he's read tons of books. It's clear he hasn't.
Yeah, there's a kind of a funny bit from transcript here, which is, if your father-in-law were to come round to your house for the very first time, do you think it would be common courtesy to put a balloon up of him in the living room, paint him orange with a giant nappy on? How do you think that relationship would develop? And first of all, if you I will just offer a general piece of relationship advice, which is just don't do that. But also, that's not the same fucking... Donald Trump was not the father-in-law of the UK, though it says
my
something about how...
My father-in-law is a very solid Irishman, so I definitely would not do that.
I wouldn't advise it, but
particularly the colour orange would be difficult in those circumstances, put it that way.
We'll leave that there. And also would totally do that. If you've got that kind of relationship with your in-laws, fine, but please fix the audio mic. We know. We had to get one last one in before we Oh man.
My audio is fine.
It's me that's the problem. Yeah. I kind of
I'm very sorry. Just you know.
Yeah.
This Twitch is free.
Yeah, the Twitch is free. Unless you don't want it to be, incidentally.
Yeah, subscribe and you can complain.
Yeah, I might put, if people can, whenever Mick's on, I'm just going to make it subscriber only so that people who pay can come. No, I'm not going to do that. Obviously.
Never do that, never.
There's a section here where he uses Sadiq Khan as an example of integration by Muslims into the UK. I'm just generally uneasy about that sort of thing as a point of principle. But yeah, that's something he mentions where he's like, you know, if Sadiq Khan isn't good enough, who is good enough? And I mean, that is kind of fair, but like, I don't see why it has to be talked about in terms of integration and so on. But you've got 3 Lynx Africas. Oh no, too many Lynx Africas. Yes, he talks about the thing with Brendan Cox, who he had on his radio show, and he said, like, suddenly guilt by association is bad when it's done to him. I always find that fun when people realise that. They're like, wait a minute, don't put the opening in your mouth with the links. And yes, Taylor writes, yeah, using people of colour as human shields, wonderful, love it. Like, we're near the end, folks, I promise. But yeah, there's that bit which, you know, okay, suddenly guilt by association is bad, and then I don't have any notes on it. I didn't bother making notes in the epilogue except like the Jeremy Corbyn quote. So unless you have anything, Mick. No, we're tired. We're just tired at this point.
The epilogue is like it's just all the same obvious shit. And then what he's doing is he's taking ages to write his book, and he tries to cram everything in, QAnon, the current government, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, make it crystal clear that, for example, Jeremy. Oh, fucking hell!
I'll read out the quote. Make it crystal clear that, for example, Jeremy Corbyn could have a prime interview slot on any programme in the country anytime he wanted. Drown out the democracy-defying hogwash that he shouldn't talk to the mainstream media because it's so biased against him. I'll make a side note here that is a reason not to fucking talk to them, incidentally. By making it clear that he can have all the time in the world to prove his fitness to government after he's asked a few questions that potential Labour voters would want answers to. And if that's too much of a challenge for him, ask how someone who can't even navigate an interview is going to run the country. I made this point on the timeline. He attended every interview that was offered to him pretty much by non-right-wing outlet. Like, he did that. That's a thing he did. During the elections, he didn't fucking run and hide from Andrew Neil. That was Boris Johnson, right? He's the one who hid in fridges and all that shit. Like, you know, it's just, again...
But again, as well, it's the fact that he cannot, of course, he can never accept this, but Boris Johnson played that election on easy mode.
Yeah.
And Corbyn's Labour never did, because Corbyn's Labour were always going to be attacked, always framed in weird ways. Those interviews were not done. You know, we have to talk about, would you nationalise sausages? To talk about the ridiculousness of how the British media engaged with Labour during that election? How can you can't make the comparison. It's not, in his mind, everyone's got a fair chance in the dojo of ideas.
The election dojo.
In the election dojo, but of course they don't.
Yeah.
That's right. But he can't admit that, because if he admitted that, he'd have to start to admit what his position is, and it comes back to that thing. He can never admit how close he is to the right wing, even as his show each morning is introed in by Nick Ferrari.
Yeah. And I think at that point, we're going to wrap up our discussion of the book, because thank God it's over. If you enjoyed that...
by the way, he starts the after... Just one last thing. He starts the afterword of the book by saying, I still don't know how they think they won, talking about Brexiteers.
Yeah, he can't leave Brexit alone, which is fantastic. But I'll try and do all the plugs for Mick, because his mic is, as we know, not well. So you can find Mick at Broken Bottle Boy on Twitter. You can subscribe to his Substack, which is Conquest of the Useless. Follow him on Twitch, twitch.tv/Broken Bottle Boy. Is that everything? Did I get everything?
Yeah, the Substack is Broken Bottle Boy. Substack.com.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, If you watch my Twitch, the microphone always works fine.
Yeah, if you watch him on his channel, his microphone's fine. It's just my channel. I'm sabotaging him on purpose to try and look good. Mick owned by more eloquent Twitch streamer. What can you do? You know? No, that's not.
There you go.
If you've enjoyed this, drop me a follow. I would really appreciate that. If you really enjoyed it, you should subscribe. Otherwise, it's probably... Yeah, Jordan, don't make suggestions now. It's too late. The ship has sailed. I'm next on tomorrow from 6 p.m. I'm playing Crusader Kings 3. I'm doing the Tonti Dynasty. We're going back to Dara. We're going to deal with this Scottish problem. You know, the fact that it exists. I'm not having that. It should be part of Greater Dara, and we're going to resolve that. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to see if there's anyone worth raiding live now, because I was led to believe that someone might be raiding, and so... might be streaming. And so we might as well give them the gift of some viewers. Apparently everyone is streaming tonight. Good lord, you're all streaming. All right, whoever gets on live first, let me know, and I'm gonna raid you. But otherwise, I'm just gonna sit here, look awkward for a second while we wait. Otherwise, I'm gonna raid the serfs, and then you can all be exposed to their fantastic stream. It is a fantastic stream, to be fair. It's just very you're all well. I'm gonna get the brain poison out of my head. Like, it's so bad. Like, you don't need to read this book. Basically, is my conclusion.
Never read this book.
Yeah, do not do that. never read.
Do not read this book. Do not. Right, I'll see you. Have a good one, everyone.
Yeah, see ya. I'm gonna drop the Discord capture so that Mick can depart at his leisure. And yeah, there you go. So we're just waiting for someone to go live, and then basically let me know. But I wonder if I could switch to the one with my massive camera. Alright, forget it. We're going to raid the serfs. If you want to go somewhere else, you can. The beauty of twitch.tv. So I'm gonna raid the serfs real quick. If you want to go elsewhere, go now. Otherwise, I will see you all. Live now. Okay, fine. We'll raid Faraj's F face then. All right, we'll go raid our good friend. He's gonna be on the stream soon, actually. So look forward to that. Otherwise, I'll catch you all soon. Good night, folks.